Okay, so it's really a pleasure to be here.
안녕하십니까.
And if I could have my slides, what I'd like to do is take you on a tour. I'd like you to come on a dream trip with me for the next 20 minutes and to understand a little bit of what I see the advances in technology in our understanding in medical care, how that will help us all live a happier and more healthier life. I want to explain to you how we can personalize the medicine that treats us. We can bring it to everybody in a simple and effective way. And perhaps the way to start is to give you an analogy. How many of you have smartphones?
스마트폰 갖고 계신 분들 손 들어주세요.
How many of you don't have
스마트폰
smartphones?
없는 분들 손 들어주시는 게 나은가요?
So when I was born,
제가 태어날
which actually
때만
was a
해도
long time ago,
오래전에 태어나긴
smartphones
했지만
didn't
제가
exist. And
스마트폰이라는
in
게
fact,
없었고요.
in order to connect people
제가
together,
태어날 때만 해도
we didn't
사람들을
use
연결하려면
microprocessors, we didn't use
마이크로프로세서도
transistors,
없고
we used
트랜지스터도 없고
what's shown here, a
여기
vacuum
나오는
tube. Probably
진공관을
most of you, or many of you,
썼습니다.
don't
아마 이
even
자리에
know what
계신 분들
it
중에
means, but
진공관이 뭔지도
if one were to
모르시는 분도
run
있을
the
텐데요.
communication system of the world with vacuum tubes, it would get so hot, it would take so much energy that it would be impossible. And so there's been a tremendous evolution over the last 50 years or so. During my lifetime, we watched it go from vacuum tube to the invention of the transistor to small circuits. Maybe we'll hear more about some of these circuits today, to the microprocessors that ultimately lead to these phones. So communication has had this enormous evolution, this enormous revolution in making things smaller, bringing it to ourselves, making it accessible to each one of us. We now have all the information we need in a telephone that's accessible to us. I want to show you how similar things are happening in our ability to control fluids that allow us to do diagnostics, to learn more about the human body, to learn more about health. So when I was very young and went to school and we wanted to study fluids, and fluids are really the core for understanding our health, and I'll show you how I mean by that in a couple of minutes. But to manipulate fluids, we used large test tubes. We moved everything by hand. Over the years, the evolution in our ability to handle that has gone to robots, has gone to many new kinds of instruments that can handle things in a much faster, smaller, quicker way. But what I want to tell you about today is the evolution to the similar kind of technology that leads to the microprocessor that's the heart of your smartphone. So too have scientists invented the technology which is called microfluidics. It's making everything small for manipulation of fluids. And this is the key to understanding how we can bring healthcare from the massive hospitals down to the individual doctors and make it personal to each and every one of us. So imagine now, go with me on a tour of imagining yourself not feeling well and wanting to go to see healthcare, to obtain healthcare, go to a hospital. Now, if you're very ill, you might go to a hospital and the doctor will come to visit you in the hospital and there'll be all this instrumentation around you. You're dependent on going to some central place, some hospital. But could we do the same thing that we did with the cell phone, with the smartphone? Could we bring healthcare to the individual? Could we personalize it? Could we make it available to each and every one of us in a unique way that's absolutely suited to you? Let me show you some of the developments, many of which are coming from my lab, but which are coming from many people's labs in this era trying to do exactly that. So, currently, the most common test that you will undergo when you go in, you're not feeling well, and you go to your doctor and she says, okay, let's understand what your disease is, how can we understand? They'll take some blood and they'll take, say, a large quantity of test tubes, something like 5 or 10 milliliters of blood. It's a lot of blood. And they'll send it away, you'll go to a hospital, they'll send it away to some diagnostic center, and 2 weeks later will come back some information about what's causing you not to feel so well. What I want to tell you about is how we can do the same thing, not with this big test tube of blood, but with the little tiny drop that's left on the needle when you pull the needle out and it's left. How can we understand the same kind of information but personalize it, bring it closer to everybody using tiny amounts of fluids? So the test tube, I want to replace the test tube by using a unique kind of test tube. It's a very, very tiny drop of a fluid. It's much, much smaller than a raindrop. It's a tiny drop, but inside that drop has enough material that I can still do a whole experiment. And by doing this, by making things compact, by making things very small, by using everything in a tiny fashion, I can do all kinds of experiments that are much simpler, much more informative, much cheaper, and much faster. And I can do things that will bring the healthcare, will bring the diagnostics to the individual, will make it accessible to each and every one of us. So, in fact, if I could just go back, the point is with one drop, it's so small that for the same amount of blood that I can do one experiment, I can do 1 billion separate experiments. So imagine me standing here and all the people in China, each one of them does an experiment for me. How can I take advantage of that? Well, first, let me show you how you can put show you something of the technology of how you can put the blood or whatever sample you're trying to do, how you can put it into these drops. This device is what we call a millipede device. See if I have a laser. No, yes, here. This is a millipede device. It has 1,000 droplet generators on each side. So look what happens when it's operating. It's making many drops all at the same time. And here's a collection of the drops. I don't have one experiment. I have 1 billion experiments with the same amount of blood. In fact, with much less blood than I start with, I can make 1 billion different experiments. Why would I want to do 1 billion experiments? What can I do with 1 billion different experiments? Let me show you some of the things. Come with me on a tour to a clinic and let's ask some questions, some simple questions. I'll give you some concrete examples of the kinds of questions we can ask and answer by being able to do this sort of thing. So the first thing that we might do is, remember, it was stated several times, the DNA. We're all, each of us, each and every one of us has DNA. That's the code that tells us all about our lives. Each of you has your own unique DNA. In fact, each cell in your body has the same type of DNA. Each cell in your body encodes the whole information of your body in it. So every cell has all the information. It's encoded in this piece of DNA. The DNA is like a series of letters. There's billions of these letters in each piece of DNA. In each cell you have the same information. And we can use that not only to find health but also to look for disease. Many diseases, not all, but many diseases are featured because there's an error. We have a series of letters and there's one letter that's wrong. It's called a mutation. And some mutations, we all have them. We have them in many cases. Most mutations don't matter, but sometimes there's
질환으로
one
이어지지
error in our
않지만
code,
경우에
in our
따라서
life,
저희
in our
코드에
DNA,
유전자
and that
코드에
leads to a disease.
문제가
And we're
있는
beginning to
즉
understand more
변이가
and more
나타나 있는
where
경우에는 그것이
the
질환으로
association of these errors are
이어진다라는
to the
것이죠.
disease.
이제
Now we
점점
have
더
to be able to
어떠한
find those errors.
오류가
So
어떠한
as you
질환을
walk into your
일으키는지
clinic and you
상관관계를
tell your
연구하고
doctor,
있는
oh, I'm not
것이고요.
feeling very
그래서
well,
요새는
now she
여러분들이
can try
병원에
and
가서
probe
몸이
this
안
by just
좋아요라고
looking for
말씀을
errors in the
하시면
DNA.
여러분들의
But the
DNA를
problem is
해석해서
that
어떤
each
오류가
cell
있는지를 볼
has
수
all this
있습니다.
information.
그런데
And
말씀을
you're not
드렸다시피
that sick, you're
여러분들
just not
인체에
feeling well.
있는
So there's
모든
only a
세포에
few
다 이
cells
정보가
that have
있다는
these
것이죠.
mutations, a few
몸이 안
cells that have these
좋다라는
mistakes.
것은
And the
모든
challenge your
세포에
doctor
다
faces
이런
is
오류가
she
있는
has to
것이
find
아니고 일부
the one
세포에만
cell,
있다는
the one
것입니다.
piece of
중요한
DNA
것은
that has the error, so she
여러분들의
can read the error and tell you, oh,
DNA에서
this is the
어떤
disease
오류가
that you
어떤
have.
세포에 있는지를
So how can you do
찾아내면
something like that?
진단이 가능한
Well,
것입니다.
I told you, you can do billions
어떻게
of
하느냐?
experiments at the
아까
same time.
말씀드렸다시피
So
저희
now we
기술을
can put
이용을
one
하면
piece of DNA
수십억
in
개의
each of the drops, just one
실험을
piece
한
of
번에 할 수
DNA,
있다는
and we
것이죠.
can look for
DNA
errors.
한 조각을
Most of them,
가지고
we
오류를
won't see
찾을 수
anything.
있습니다.
But
대부분의
occasionally, you'll see
DNA에는
some error. This
문제가
is just an
없겠지만
example where
간혹
each of
가다가
these drops
변이가 있는
are mainly normal
DNA를 찾을 수
DNA,
있습니다.
but occasionally there's an error. We put some extra errors in here. You can see it. It lights up.
에러가 있는
So all we have to do is
변이가
detect
있는
these
DNA는
things.
이렇게
Here's a
형광색으로
detector.
밝게 빛이
This is the
나도록
kind of
실험을 하고
microfluidic
있습니다.
device. You look at
이렇게
each of the drops.
미세 유체
This is
공학 장치를
a movie
통해서
that's playing at very
방울방울들이
slow speed.
분리가
It's in
되죠.
fact going very,
굉장히
very rapidly. So
저속으로
we're doing
보이지만
billions of
굉장히
experiments
실제
every day
실험은
with this
급속하게
device. And it's
고속으로
choosing. This
일어납니다.
just
그래서
has two different
매일매일
colors, but it would
수십억 개의
choose
실험을
the
하는데요.
one drop that
이렇게
has the error in
방울별로
it. So we can identify
검사를 해서
where the error
오류가
is.
있는
We can ask what the error
방울들을
is.
분리를
Everything can be
해냅니다.
done in a very
이것을
compact sense. We
굉장히
don't have to send it to a
컴팩트하게 할 수
clinic,
있고요.
to
굳이 별도의 검사
a central
시설로 보낼
facility.
필요도
We don't have to wait
없습니다.
2 weeks
또
for it to be
2주를
done.
기다릴
We can do
필요도
it immediately.
없습니다.
Your doctor,
바로바로
she'll do it
결과가
right in
나죠.
her own
즉
office.
여러분들이 동네 병원에 가셔도
Here's an
의사
example.
선생님이
This is
현장에서 바로
the
검사를 할
English
수 있다는
expression
것입니다.
is the proverbial finding a
결국은
needle, one little
예전에
needle
저희가
in a
하려고 했던
haystack.
것이
How can you do
집더미에서
it?
바늘을
Well, this is the way you
찾는
can
거의
do it
불가능에
because you
가까운
have
일이었지만
so many
이제는
different pieces
가능합니다.
of DNA,
워낙
so many
DNA를
experiments that you
수십억
can
개를
do all at
동시에
the same time
검사를
because
하기
each one
때문에
is done in such a
바늘을
small
찾을 수
volume.
있다는
Each one
것이죠.
is done
지푸라기를
so
하나하나
rapidly.
검사하는
Here's an
것과
example
동일한
where in this
상황입니다.
case we're
지금
detecting
보시면
only
저희가
one
하려고 하는
in
것은
a million drops,
100만 개의
one in a million,
방울 중에
that
하나를
we find
찾아내는
the error.
것이죠.
So now your doctor can
그것이
use this and she can
가능합니다.
come
100만
back
개
to you and say,
중에
okay, you
에러가
have
여기
this
있다는
mistake in
것을
your DNA,
의사가
and I can look it
진단을
up and I say,
해서
okay,
DNA
this is the
중에 이
diseases
부분에
that
문제가
cause this. This is
있으니까
why you
그러면
aren't feeling well.
이런 질환들이 나타날
So
가능성이
you can
있고
do this with
그래서
very,
몸이
very
안 좋은
small
것이다라는
amounts of
진단을 할 수가
sample. You
있습니다.
can do this very
즉
rapidly,
굉장히
and you
작은
can do
양의
it for
혈액
each
샘플을
individual.
가지고 빨리 할
It's
수
for
있고
yourself.
환자마다 맞춤식으로 진단이
Imagine,
가능하다는 것이
unfortunately, one of the most
장점입니다.
common diseases is cancer.
암이
This is a good
굉장히
example.
흔한 또
I'd like to
심각한
discuss this.
질환이죠.
God
암에
forbid that we
대해서
should any of
말씀을
us have
드리도록
cancer, but
하겠습니다.
many of us
암이 생기면 안
ultimately will get it
되겠지만
because this is one of the
암이
most
걸릴
common
수 있습니다.
diseases
암은
as we
요즘
get older,
특히
as we live
나이가
in this
들고
more
현대
polluted
생활을 하고
environment.
환경
Cancer
오염이
becomes more and more
심각해지면서
common.
암의 발병률이
One of the
올라가고
common
있습니다.
manifestations of
그래서
cancer is a
암이
tumor.
생기면
It's a
보통
growth in your
종양이
body
생기죠.
of cells that grow
종양이라고 하는 것은
in an
세포가
uncontrolled
통제할 수
fashion.
없는 방식으로
The
증식이
problem
되는
is,
것이
first of all, to
종양입니다.
identify it. Secondly, to
문제는
cure it.
종양을
But thirdly, the
찾아서
problem
그것을
is
치료해야
that for each
하겠지만
individual, cancer can be
문제는
very different.
개인마다
In fact,
환자마다
if you
암이
look at any
다르다는
given
것이죠.
tumor, it is
어떤
made up of
종양을
many,
보시면
many different
종양도
cells.
여러
Each
가지
cell
종류의
is
세포로
different.
구성이 되어 있고
There are many
각
types of cells.
세포마다 성격이
And
다르고
with our
종류가
current technology,
다릅니다.
we can't
현재의
really distinguish the
기술로는 사실
difference between the
종양을
cells.
구성하고
Why
있는
is that
세포들을
important?
구분을
It's important for two
못합니다.
reasons.
그러나
One,
세포를
whatever cancer you
구분해야만
have
하는
might be different than
것은
the next
내가
person.
앓고
And
있는
in order
암이
to
다른
effectively
암
treat
환자와는
it, you'd
다를
like to
수
know the
있기
difference
때문에
between them, not just the
효과적으로 암
similarity,
치료를
but the difference.
하려면
Let's
유사성이
personalize medicine.
아니라
So when you walk into the clinic,
차이점을
when you go to the
치료를 해야
hospital,
하기
they
때문이죠.
treat
즉
you.
맞춤식
They don't treat everybody.
치료입니다.
They treat you.
모든
Can
암
we do
환자를
that?
동일하게 치료하지
Secondly,
않고
because the cells
암
are so
환자에게
different, what can
맞춤식의
happen, what often
개별화된
happens
치료가
is that you
가능하기
can try to
위해서는 세포를
cure
구분할 수
the
있어야
general
합니다.
cancer. You
또
cure
한
the type
가지는
of of cancer that you have,
자체는
there's
치료할 수
drugs that try to
있어도
kill the
또
cancer
어떤
cells that try
특정한
and kill them.
암에
Very often what
대응하는
happens is it
암치료제는
kills
있을 수
most of the
있지만
cells, but there's just a few
대부분의
that are
암세포는
sufficiently
제거를
different
해도
that that they survive those drugs.
암세포와는
You
다른
need to
세포들은 일부
identify each
살아남을
and
수
every
있다는
cell.
것이
You need to
문제입니다.
see
즉
the differences between
완전한
them.
암 치료를 하기
With this technology,
위해서는 여러
now it's
가지
possible.
종류의 세포를 구분하고 세포의
Here's a
종류에
way
맞는
where
치료법이
again we're
개발이
using the
가능해야만
drops,
합니다.
and
지금
if I
보시는
watch,
것도
oh, there's a
이렇게
cell. If you watch here,
드롭을, 즉
you'll
방울을
see
만들어내고
occasionally this
있죠.
is a
그리고
drop.
방울
There's this
안에
large
세포들이
particle, and I'll tell you in a
들어있습니다.
second what that does. But
이것이
occasionally, I think the next
경우에
drop which comes
따라서
along here
지금
is
보시면
it has a
지금
cell.
이 방울
We put a
보시면
cell inside
세포들이
of it,
하나씩
and we put a
하나씩
big particle
방울마다
inside. This
들어갑니다.
particle is
이
something that puts an
입자들이
address to the cell.
결국은
It
각
tells us
세포마다
exactly
주소를
what
주는
address,
것입니다.
what type of
이
cell it is.
세포는
And
어떤
then we
세포인지
take everything
주소를
and we
부여를
read the
하고요.
information.
이것을
We read
묶어서
the
정보를
genetic code
읽어냅니다.
of each and
그
every cell
안에 들어있는
by
세포의
itself,
유전 정보를
individually, one at
세포
a time.
단위로
We can do this
하나씩
because we
하나씩
can do
읽어냅니다.
so many
이게
experiments
가능한
because we
것은
have everything
동시에
in
너무나
small droplets.
많은
This
실험을
technology
할 수 있기
enables
때문인
us to
것이죠.
look
이
at
기술
very, very
덕분에
tiny amounts of
굉장히
material
작은
in
양의
very, very large
물질을
numbers. So here's an
숫자를
example. You
읽어낼
don't
수
need to
있는
understand this
것입니다.
except to know
이것을
that this is
이해하실
the
필요는
genetic
없는데요.
decoding of
유전적인
not a
정보를
single cell,
읽어내는
but of
것이
1,000, nearly
세포가
1,920
아니고
individual cells. And what this
천 개의
allows us to
세포를
do
읽을 수
is
있다라는
here are
것입니다.
small
지금
things that are happening in this cell.
920개의 세포를 읽고
Just
있는
a few
것이죠.
cells have this kind of
920개의
information.
세포를
A few more cells have
읽어보면
this. We can
이쪽
see
분야에 나오는
unique
세포도 있고
individual
저쪽 구역에서
occurrences.
읽히는 세포도
And from
있습니다.
this we
이렇게
can start to
세포마다
design drugs
상황을
that
읽고
treat
있기
exactly
때문에
this tumor for
이
this person,
종양은 이
your own
환자의
tumors.
경우
How do
이렇게
we do
치료를
that?
해야 한다라는
Well,
맞춤식
here's one
치료가
way we
가능한
might do it.
것이죠.
All of
치료가
us,
어떻게
the
가능하냐?
reason that we are so
결국은
successful at
저희가
surviving, why we are
생존을
so
잘하는 이유는
able to survive so
저희가
many
여러 가지
things is that
질환을
we have our
겪으면서도
own
살아남는
immune
이유는
system.
면역
Our
체계가
immune
있기
system, in
때문입니다.
fact, is trying
우리의
to
면역 체계가
attack these tumor cells,
적극적으로 이런
these
암세포를
cells that are
공격을
invading the
하죠.
body.
즉
But the
외부에서
problem is,
들어오는
although
세포들을
it can
저희의
identify
면역
those
체계는 공격을
cells,
합니다.
it can't
이런
really kill
외부
the cells. It
세포를
can't really
확인을
do something
해야만
to
공격을 할
create its
수가
own drugs.
있습니다.
But we can help your own immune
중요한
system.
것은
We can
면역
make
체계가
your
외부
own
세포를
system work for you to
확인하는
attack
기능을
your own cancer.
증강시켜줄 수
That's
있다는
bringing
것이죠.
medicine,
그래서
it's
스스로
bringing
면역 체계가 암을
the
더 잘
treatment
퇴치할 수
to a
있도록
personal
면역
level.
체계의
The way we
기능을
do this is that
제고시키는
the
것입니다.
body has cells
그렇게
that
하는
produce
방법은
molecules called antibodies. Antibodies are
만들어지는
wonderful molecules
기능을
because they
더
identify
강화를 하는 것이죠.
very, very
항체는
specific cells,
구체적인
very, very specific
외부 세포에
molecules. And your
맞춰져서
body is
만들어지는 것이
producing
항체입니다.
molecules, these
이
antibodies,
항체를
that will
인간
identify
인체가
each cell in your
만들어내는데
tumor.
이
The problem is,
암세포에
it
맞춰서
identifies
항체가
it, but the
만들어지면
reason
되는
that you're sick
것이죠.
is that the body
그럼에도
can't
불구하고
kill
암이
those
해결이 되지 않는
mutant
이유는
cells, can't kill those cells that are
이런
trying to take over your body, the cancerous cells. But what we can do is we can say, okay, which of the antibodies, we can do a simple experiment. We can take these antibody producing cells, we can take the target cells, we can put them together in these small experiments. We can do 1 billion experiments just for your tumor, just for you, from your antibodies, and we can find your antibodies that identify your tumor, and we can take those antibodies, we can isolate them and make them into more effective drugs. We can make personal medicine just for you, just for your tumor, just so it can work directly with you. This is the technology that will become available because of this kind of microfluidics, this ability to do this large number of experiments on small quantities of material. Here's another thing. After you're starting to cure the cancer, can we see whether you still have cancer? The typical way, in fact, to tell whether you have cancer is to do an operation, to cut some of the tumor out and to go and look at it and see whether it's really a tumor of some sort. We no longer have to do that because there are a very small number of tumor cells that circulate in your blood. Can we just isolate them? Just take a small amount of blood and isolate them and find the cancer just by doing that. That's called a liquid biopsy. And there's a group at the Mass General Hospital that's developed a wonderful microfluidic chip that
추출해서
finds
그것을
these
검사를
very,
하는
very small number of cells in the
가능합니다.
huge number of
혈액
cells
중에
that are left in
굉장히
the blood.
극소량의
And by taking those cells
있지만
and putting them into the drops, then we can do very, very precise analysis, and we can identify exactly what they are and ask, where are the mutations? How can we develop the treatment? Do you still have the cancer? Is the cancer occurring? Just by looking at your blood, not by doing any operations. Here's an example. These are real data where we compare the number of cancerous cells that we see. The number of cancerous cells that we see using this technology are hundreds of times. You're looking at the same patients, you don't see any cancerous cells if you don't use this very special technology. So this is bringing it, it's making it much more accessible. It's making it much easier for you to look at your individual cancer. So, in fact, this same technology, looking for rare cells, can be used for looking at the rare cells in a mother's blood. A mother will have a few cells, after a few weeks, will have a few cells of her child's blood circulating in her own blood. If we can identify that, we can, in a very simple, non-invasive fashion, do genetic tests of the cells of the child very early on to see are there potential diseases, are there problems. You don't have to do what's currently done, and that's to try and do a very invasive test to collect the blood or the cells from the unborn child itself. Finally, one last thing that we can do. There's currently a great epidemic of disease, and this is a very common disease. Viral diseases are very common. They can be extremely severe. My prototypic example right now is Ebola, which is happening in Africa, which is a terrible disease. It's a very, very lethal disease. Many, many people get it. It's very infectious. There is no cure for it, but here's a simple way to find a cure for it. Although Ebola is so lethal, it kills about half the people who get it. But that also means that half the people survive. Why do they survive? They survive because they're effective at producing antibodies that kill the virus. What we can do with the same technology is looking at the antibodies. We can take the blood from the survivors and we can look for the antibodies of the survivors that are lethal against the virus. This is just showing how it can be done by having a cell that the virus attacks and putting an antibody cell. And if the virus doesn't attack the cell, we can pull that one cell out. Those are the antibodies that cure the disease. This is a way of very rapidly letting other people help us find the cure. So I've tried to say a variety of things. What I hope I've been able to do is take you on a tour to try and dream about this. The ability that we have now to do very simple, very inexpensive, very personalized experiments to really bring diagnostics, to bring medicine back to each and every one of us. And this future, this is not so much a dream. This future is now. Already, instruments like this are being commercialized. In the next few years, we'll see a rapid expansion of this. So please dream with me, but also please believe that it's a reality. In 5 years, I think things will have changed. Things will really have improved to the point where we'll all take advantage of this. That's my dream, and I share it with you. And I thank you for sharing it with me.